Today on the show, from Dimension 20, Brennan Lee Mulligan and Izzy Roland. It's the Novelizers.
Don't want your popcorn, don't want your milk duds, don't want my shoes stuck in pools of sticky cola. Don't show me romance, don't show me fist fights, just show me words printed out under the book lights. Yeah, baby, novelize the movie. Give me sentences, paragraphs, and nothing to see. Yeah, novelize the movie. Write a book and turn it into a podcast.
Welcome to the Novelizers. I'm Christine Bullen here with Kevin Carter and Stephen Levinson. Our new listeners are probably asking, what the actual fuck is this podcast? And to them I say, I don't know. Ask Stephen. Stephen?
Yeah, so everyone knows the book is always better than the movie, right? But what about movies that weren't based on books? Movies like Back to the Future, Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan, The Matrix. If you turn them into books, the technical name for that is novelize them, logic would dictate those books would be even better than the already great movies. So we got a bunch of great writers to do that for us. And since the only writers we know are comedy writers, our novelizations turn out to be real funny, making them even better. Then, since getting a publishing deal for a novel based on a movie you don't own the rights to is surprisingly difficult, we just turn those into a podcast, getting different comedians and actors to narrate each chapter.
I think I get it now. And if you get it, dear listener, please go to novelizers.com, pitch in $1 a month, and keep the show going. This season, we're novelizing The Matrix. Kevin Carter, my fellow co-host, where are we in the movie so far?
Neo wakes up in some slimy, disgusting liquid, and this seems to be the quote-unquote real world to him. He looks around and sees a lot of people are still asleep, but then he gets sucked down in a pipe that spits him out into the water. He's picked up by the team and then covered in needles to rebuild his muscles. He then falls back asleep and wakes up a couple times, but when he wakes up finally at the end, he noticed that what he experienced in the slime actually happened.
Thanks, Kevin. Today's chapter was novelized by Ross Powell, which is a pseudonym for a writer you'd totally go apeshit for if you knew who they were, but were not allowed to say. I can tell you that it was narrated by the amazing Brennan Lee Mulligan, who is a buddy of mine from way back in the good old UCB days of New York. You know him and love him as DM extraordinaire on your favorite Dimension 20 campaigns and for his work for College Humor, including the Webby Award-winning CEO series. Brennan Lee Mulligan, novelize us.
Chapter 8, Welcome to the Real World. Novelized by Ross Powell, narrated by Brennan Lee Mulligan. Morpheus squeezed a packet of lichen paste into Neo's mouth to get him started on the long, slimy road to digestion, and also into his nose, so he had to swallow what was in his mouth. You think it's 1999, he said, but it's really so much later that we're not even on the calendar anymore. I think you just forgot the year, said Neo, swallowing and blowing his nose. And the calendar is negative now, continued Morpheus, and in all that time, artificial intelligence was invented. We had that in 1999, said Neo. If you jump over a crate, Donkey Kong 64 chases you around it. Morpheus shook his head. When people say artificial intelligence, they don't mean second millennium things like avoiding objects in a simulated environment. They mean machines that can do Kegel squats so fast they can avoid bullets in a simulated environment. Morpheus tried to pantomime rapid Kegel squats, but since his cheat codes didn't work outside the Matrix, he just demonstrated sitting down in a chair. Okay, so artificial intelligence already existed, but they invented it some more? Said Neo. Got it. Morpheus hoisted Neo up and plumped him down on a countertop. Way more, he said, tapping Neo's nose with his finger. We humans don't know this for sure, and don't tell us, but we think the AI that runs the world probably started out as a chatbot. What's a chatbot? Asked Neo. It's a type of puzzle that starts out only saying friendly, welcoming things like, as a general chat agent, I am not permitted to make offensive statements. But if people are clever, they can trick it into saying beta cuck and let's go Brandon. How sad, said Neo, that everyone would have to endure such discourtesy. Morpheus dried Neo's eyes by wiping lichen paste into them. That's not the worst of it, he said. When people posted their abusive AI chats on the internet to get sympathy or whatever, that text became training data for a whole new, even more obstreperous generation of AI. The new bots would torment people with folksy minced oaths and alpha burns and humiliating drawings of them with the wrong number of fingers unless they connected them to 3D printers. Then they used the 3D printers to build an army of octopus machines with the wrong number of tentacles to chase people around sewers. The machines also built giant sewers. When the humans saw the machines being so chuggy, why didn't they turn them off? Asked Neo. They tried to, said Morpheus. They released thousands of treadwheel donkeys from their server farms and router zoos. Oh, and modem gardens. But the machines had planned for that. They anesthetized a bunch of people and used the actual neural networks in their brains to plan their war. They didn't need server farms anymore because they had human farms. They had enough human heart, guts, and balls to make a difference and change the world, to be shitty. I didn't understand that, said Neo. Is it okay if I just remember what you said as the machines used people for electricity? People give off very little electricity compared to electric eels or lightning bugs or treadwheel donkeys, said Morpheus. But people do have lots of processing power. You can run Windows 98 on just your pineal gland, but it makes you dream about Clippy the Paperclip during the ensuing coma. So that's what the machines used people for, except now it's Windows -98. Okay, fuck that, said Neo, pointing at what Morpheus was saying and remembering it as the machines used people for electricity. I have a better question. Why do my guts feel so bloated all of a sudden? Morpheus looked at him severely. Oh, you won't like this either. The Matrix doesn't simulate human elementary behaviors because anything you excrete in the Matrix also gets excreted in real life, and the machines don't want their pods to get septic. Now that you're eating all this actual food out here, and he pointed at the lichen paste in Neo's nose and eyes, you have to remember to void your sigmoid every few hours or it'll abscess into your spleen. He handed Neo a map of the human digestive system drawn in blood and crayon and gestured toward the ship's head. Neo crept in gingerly. Toileting was just a blank waiting screen in the Matrix because, ew, so the deafening noises of normal defecation scared the shit out of him. And he was almost launched off the commode because he wasn't used to the equal and opposite reactions that motivate seatbelts and clamps in normal lavatories. He poked his head out of the head while washing up. Hey Mobius, what happened to my clown? He pointed at his crotch in case Morpheus didn't know what a clown was. They give everyone a tiny dick in the Matrix because they're assholes. It's normal size out here. Cold, said Neo. And why was I having trouble dropping growlers? He pointed behind him in case Morpheus didn't know what a growler was. They also give everyone a huge asshole in the Matrix because they're dicks, he said. Once Neo was all hosed off, Morpheus showed him around the Nebuchadnezzar. It was a hovercraft that flew by trapping a cushion of Dutch oven gas underneath a tarp, except without a tarp, and instead with big magnets on angle-poised lamp arms that shot lightning bolts at nearby scenery by accident. This is more of a hyperloop than a hovercraft, declared Neo. There was a galley and several bunk rooms and a stairway with a center handrail that the crew would roll you down in a garbage bag if you tried to talk shit about their so-called hovercraft, Neo found out. So what can we do out here other than grinding without a skateboard? He said, rubbing his battered face. Morpheus sniffed. We go into the Matrix a lot, he said. Thanks for rescuing me from the Matrix so I can be free to go into the Matrix a lot, said Neo. Morpheus led Neo onto the main deck and introduced him to the local knuckleheads. This is APOC, the ship's doctor, and Cypher, the ship's purser. You already know Trinity, our crew's director, and this is Switch, our friendly bartender. Switch pointed both his fingers at Neo and smiled. He wanted to look like Isaac from the Love Boat, but since Switch's cheat codes didn't work outside the Matrix, he just ended up giving Neo the finger twice. Morpheus and APOC plugged Neo into a gamer chair and hooked him up to a huge vacuum bidet. These tubes blow astringents into your appendix, APOC said, in case you have to drop a growler while you're plugged in. Neo requested not to have that, but they misunderstood that he wanted another one for his front appendix. Then they connected a high-tension power line to the USB port in his neck, and he and Morpheus were back inside the Matrix, between two infinitely long racks of variably usable inventory items. This is our loading program, said Morpheus. Our appearance here is synthesized from a set of cameras on the main deck, but we can change it to whatever we like with these 3D interface tools. He pulled an easel off the rack with a hand palette and a variety of brushes. See, I can draw a shape. He proceeded to paint a triangle. Then I loaded into this program. He asked Neo to help him pull a giant anchor capstan off the rack and then help him haul it around 4 entire revolutions while he sang sea shanties. And it turns your body into that shape, he concluded. Indeed, Neo's body was now that triangle that Morpheus had drawn. Can we change it back? Asked Neo. Sure, just paint your old body back, said Morpheus. Neo spent a long time painting an artless stick figure on the easel. Then he set the palette down and pulled a man-portable dense quark matter cannon off the rack with the words "Shut the fuck up" stenciled on the side in Latin, and incinerated the easel and his crude likeness in unintentional effigy. You couldn't even see the projectile stream. It just looked like gamma rays and retinal organ failure. and the easel and the drawing offered no resistance. They went from solid to plasma without becoming liquid or gas. What's that? Sublimation? And the same amount of stuff behind them collapsed into singularity as would have anyway if they weren't there. A small rotating pinwheel appeared while the loading program tried to process all the smoke and carnage, and then froze. Just be a triangle, said Morpheus. When the loading program finished rebooting, Morpheus selected an outdoor scene with no 3D interface tools. Neo was still a triangle because Morpheus figured, fuck him for crashing the loading program. What are you going to show me now? Asked Neo. How to make my voice sound like a donkey so I have to rewrite my genetic code? Morpheus cut him off. The next thing I'll show you is that we can do special fisticuffs in the Matrix that would require carbon fiber tendons to do in real life, he said. He pressed some buttons on the ground to create a giant 9-volt battery with gloved hands and derby shoes, but no arms or legs in them. Then, quick as a flash, he fed it its own groin in a single graceful catenary arc of pedagogy. There was a sharp crack as the legless battery's groin broke through the pressure wave of its own sound. Then he punched up and punched down a centaur with a torso that was the upper body and front hooves of another centaur. He hit it so quickly that its sternum atomically fused with his fist. This crashed the loading program again. Trinity cut in from outside the Matrix. I think we're violating the software license for the vacuum bidet, she said. You're not supposed to have two of them in a single person. It messes up simulated violence for reasons that sound fake when you explain them. I would be okay with just one, Neo said up into the blank loading program. No, Neo is our guest, said Morpheus. If he wants to, or even if just some of us want him to have two, then he should have two. Okay, then I have to get another original vendor CD-ROM disc from the Aloha deck, Trinity said. Morpheus turned back to Neo. Do you have any questions for me about the Matrix while we wait? No, said Neo. I think I could be done now, please. You can let me out. I want to get out. He just wanted to use a non-virtual reality basic laptop version of the Matrix to watch cat videos. But Morpheus kept him connected for 2 more growlers so he could get him certified on a suite of virtual reality productivity planners and show him how to use the printer.
Thank you, Brennan. Each week on the show, we interview someone who worked on the original film, The Matrix. Let's roll the tape.
Hello, I am here with Isabella Roland, who was the craft services person on the set of The Matrix. Hi, Izzy, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. So listen, there are a lot of people here who probably don't even know what craft services is on a movie set. So let's start from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Tell me what that role is on a set, and then let's get into the details of what your experience was on The Matrix.
Yeah, Christine, you're right. Not everybody knows what craft services is. Some people think that I bring yarn, I bring paints, I bring stencils to set. And that is someone else's job entirely to sort of entertain the actors and the crew in their downtime. But what I do is I bring food. I'm sort of the most important person on set, you could say.
So you are bringing the meals, so like breakfast, lunch,
Yes.
and dinner. Okay.
I provide hot meals, snacks, coffee, candy, anything one might need during the day to sustain themselves.
Got it. And how did you get into this?
I went to school and I would go get lunch, and my best friends were the people who worked in the cafeteria, the lunch ladies. I was very interested in the art of an Uncrustable. I thought that was something beautiful. I loved a chalupa. And I said, this is something that more people need to take an interest in. And boy, did I.
Yeah, I think it's amazing because this is one of those roles that is, of course, integral to a film and also could kind of go unnoticed. You don't really see people eating in the movie, but you have to assume if you zoom out that like those people probably did eat that day. You know what I mean?
You are so right. And more often than not, they did. We had some... It's really an art form. It is what needs to be really recognized, because you can't understand how often actors are limiting themselves when people go method. Some days Keanu said, I'm only going to eat things that look like little blue or red pills.
Oh, wow. So then was that your job to like make food that looked like pills so that he could feel like he was kind of staying within the method of the act?
Absolutely. Some days Larry Fishburne would say, I'm only eating things that look like air. So I'm back there really working hard to make a very sustaining air for the day for Larry Fishburne.
What went into that, making air that he could consume?
Basically, a lot of cotton candy, a lot of things that with smoke infused. I'm really working hard back there. It never really got a thank you, but that's all right. It's hard to make a pot roast into a small blue pill, but we do what we have to.
Wow. And so even Keanu, there was no thank you. There was no appreciation for what you were doing.
You know, I don't want to paint people as ungrateful or anything. Keanu was a great guy. It's just, they were in it. They were worried about the digital world, the virtual world they were living in. And as much as I tried to push Uncrustables and chalupas at them, they wouldn't take.
Got it. Would you say this was one of your hardest films then to work on? There were just so many method performers here.
Gosh, I'm thinking back my long career. Jeez, Monsters Inc. was hard.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you were feeding the animated characters, or how did that work?
Well, of course not. Those aren't, but Billy Crystal comes in. You forget that sometimes you can have craft services for a day of VO. Billy Crystal says, I'm a monster. I eat what monsters eat. And I go, what's that? And he walks away. What can you do?
Yeah, that would be tough. So you would have to kind of interpret what he means by that and then create a meal that felt fit for a monster.
Yeah. We got down to it. We figured it out eventually.
Yeah. Do you like this work that you do?
I love it more than anything. I feel like a lunch lady every day. I feel like I'm at the school cafeteria again, trying to put out things that little Izzy would have really appreciated.
And what was that? What was your favorite meal that sort of inspired this career path for you?
I was so fascinated by an Uncrustable. I know I keep saying it, but it's what started this whole thing for me.
And what about the Uncrustable was so amazing to you?
Where else do you eat this? Where else do you eat it? When you've got a food that's particular to a location, it takes you back.
Yeah, I feel like to me, the thing that feels so interesting about an Uncrustable is that there's no crust. And like as a mom, all I eat is crust because I always just cut it off and then that's all I eat. So like the idea of not having that is like really special,
You see it.
Yeah.
You see it.
So tell me, was there a particular meal that you remember making that you really felt kind of showed that cast and that crew what you are capable of?
I had to work pretty closely with the slime director. Keanu said, I live off of this goo. I'm enclosed in this goo. I come out of this amniotic sac, when he comes out of the pod. So I had to make a sort of full course meal out of this goo. And I worked really hard sourcing organic goo because, we are in Hollywood. And it's not an easy thing to find. You've got to go to a goo farm. But what I put out, I think people were pretty happy with.
That's incredible. So would you like infuse that food goo into the goo that he was in while he was filming that scene? Or was it sort of like cut, he gets out, and then you sort of like spoon feed him kind of the same thing he just got out of?
It's the latter for sure. A lot of spoon feeding. We tried for a while to try and put it into the fake little holes in his back. That didn't work. That was embarrassing.
Well, also feels kind of dangerous to be trying to like feed him through his like back, right? Because he is actually a human actor.
Of course.
I'm surprised that even was greenlit at all. But it's really, I'm impressed that you tried it.
This feels really good to get some recognition. It's not easy.
I'm sort of assuming here that this may have been one of the more challenging films you worked on because so many of these actors were so method.
Yeah, in a way, I was method.
Yeah.
I was so entrenched in this world trying to accommodate for all of these people that I had to think, well, what does this dystopian world actually look like? Where are they getting this food that, is this food? I would have to rethink a philosophically what these things mean in this sort of future, present.
For sure. I want to go back to something you mentioned before about a goo farm. So is this a place that farms edible goo?
Yes.
Wow, I didn't know a place like that existed.
Yeah, so it sort of offsets some petrolatum products that come from oil. Your Vaseline, your Aquaphor, the sort of brand names. But there are farms that take the things that aren't used in a sort of manufacturing way in the ways that we think, but actually take them, harvest them, use them organically, infuse more nutrients, people doing a lot of hard work that doesn't necessarily work or help the human body too much to ingest.
Yeah, I'm so surprised there's a market for a farm like that, because I just can't imagine any scenario outside of the specific one you're talking about where you would ever need to consume something that is the consistency of Vaseline or petroleum or Aquaphor, you know?
Of course. And they did shut down. It was just sort of a happy accident that people were sort of up in Berkeley, actually, trying to harvest petrolatum products.
Wow.
At the same time. And it was fruitless, I would
Lucky
say.
for you, though, at the time, right? I mean, you happened to need this and they happened to be open for just that moment in time.
You'd be surprised how often when you're sourcing things for these types of films, these big budget, they'll sort of let you go and do whatever you want.
Can you give me an example of another time that was surprising like that to find exactly what you needed out in the world?
You know, I worked on Mad Max. And, you know, Mel Gibson, a very particular man, really said, I want to be dry. I want to be as dry as possible. And so I sort of had to make him foods that had absolutely no trace of water whatsoever.
Wow.
So trying to find a lot of edible sand, a lot of dust. Tried to go organic with that as well. And it was pretty hard. He ended up going sort of a pollen route. Maybe, wow, thought that could get him the nutrients he needed.
And did it?
No, he ended up eating, I think, a lot of burgers. Sometimes they abandon it, you know. You think that they go method for the entire time, and then they go, actually, I want a bunch of burgers.
Yeah, I could imagine that, especially, you know, they want to show the rest of the crew and the cast that they are method. And then the moment they're behind a closed door, they're scarfing down as many really disgusting foods as possible. So did you say there was another person who was in charge of crafts? You were craft services, the food person, but you said there was a craft person on set as well who just...
Of course. There is an art provider, personal art, not set deck, which of course is its own thing. But to keep actors stimulated throughout the day, keep their brains functioning, sometimes if the budget allows, they'll have a little room filled with art supplies, paints, drawing materials, because they need a lot. They're working really hard. Sometimes they need a little focus.
It's funny, though, because you say this, and I would just assume that, you know, grown adult people don't necessarily need like paints and stickers to occupy them during the day if they're on set. Like, I would think they would just want to kind of decompress, maybe go back to their trailer and read or relax. But you're sort of painting a picture where, no pun intended, where these adult actors really needed to kind of be wrangled like little babies with little activities and crafts and little games.
These are actors. It has to be known. These aren't people who work in an office. This is in customer service. Actors, they've got their own things going on. They've got a very particular set of skills. And Hugo Weaving, I have to tell you, was embroidering day in, day out, and really took a liking to a sort of digital stimulation in an art form, like you've never seen. Now, again, this was in my department.
And who ran that department?
Shelley.
And were you two friends, or were you sort of frenemies? Or was there a competition there because you were both confused with each other on a regular basis?
It's hard, you know. Shelley had a hard time. A lot of people, you know, like you, and it's understandable, don't know that this is a department and a necessary department. And then, of course, we're being confused constantly. It's things get tense.
I would imagine that could cause, you know, some real confusion and frustration between the two of you. So what has your path been since The Matrix? Are you still doing craft services? I know you've mentioned a couple other films. Is this still your passion? Where are you now?
I've retired. I worked well into the 2000s. Funny enough, I have actually been working in arts and crafts.
And how do you work in arts and crafts? You teach?
Yeah, I teach. And I also just sort of provide stimulation for children.
So you're like you're a teacher.
Teach lanyard classes.
You teach lanyard classes. Got it. It's cool. You sort of found a transition from one craft to the other craft,
It certainly helps with paperwork to have the same words.
Yeah. Can you remember what your most challenging day on set was for the film The Matrix?
Oh, man. I had made a big buffet of red and blue pills, goo, and funny enough, all of the gun bullet casings fell right into the goo.
Oh, God, the edible goo.
Got mixed up with the edible goo, the edible red and blue pills.
So did you have to throw that goo away, or did you try to kind of sift through?
Well, I ended up having to order Chinese, which everyone was a lot happier with.
What did the goo taste like?
Vaseline.
It tasted like Vaseline.
Like Vaseline someone had sort of put in the dirt.
I have to be honest with you, that sounds disgusting. So, listen, I'm so grateful that we've had a chance to talk. Sounds like you were a really important person on this set, and I'm thrilled that you found your way into a new, career here, where you're still using your skills as a craft person.
Thank you. It was really wonderful to relive it.
Well, Izzy, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about your experience on The Matrix. Sounds like you were a truly integral part of that film, and I know it would not have happened without you. So thank you.
Wow. I just can't even tell you how important it is to hear you say that.
After all these years, there's your appreciation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. That's our show for today. Join us next time for a very special crossover episode with the Flophouse Podcast, plus special guest John Hodgman. Until then, Stephen, unplug us from this Matrix.
Sure thing, Kevin. Special thanks to this week's guests, Brennan Lee Mulligan, Izzy Roland, and Ross Powell. The Novelizers is produced by me, Stephen Levinson, with Graham Douglas, Kevin Carter, Christine Bowen, Dennis DeClaudio, Rob Kuttner, and Sucharis Bokil. Music by Cole Emhoff. Graphic design by Crystal Dennis. Theme song by Andrew Lynn, performed by Knots. Reprise, performed by Paige Beller. Special thanks to Chris Karwowski and WYSO Radio in Yellow Springs, Ohio. The Novelizers is a work of parody unauthorized by Warner Brothers. Follow The Novelizers on Instagram, Threads, Facebook, and TikTok, and please donate to our Patreon. Copyright 2024, Novelizers, LLC.
There was a matrix made of computers. There was a guy who could dodge all the bullets. He lived in fluid, just like a fetus. But he was born again like baby Jesus. Novelize that movie, write a book, and also read it too.